I'm Darren, and I want to tell you a story about an experience that I just had over the Labor Day weekend. I took a short weekend trip, and so many just awful things happened that I will never forget, and that's what I'm about to share with you now. So 2 weeks prior, my friend had invited me to go fishing over Labor Day weekend. And I am an avid fisher. We did bay chair fishing over on the island, and deep sea fishing as well. And it's rare that I get an opportunity to do that, you know? So I was really looking forward to being able to go. Like swordfish, really large fish, to be able to reel them in. You know, they're like the size of a boat. And I asked, how much does it cost? And my friend said it didn't cost anything. So I thought this is an awesome opportunity. I was so looking forward to it and couldn't wait. So we all arrived on a Friday at 7 in the evening. We had planned to go fishing until early Sunday. Probably till about 10, so about 36 hours of fishing out on the sea. And go fishing overnight. So I was really excited about this. So when we all got there at 7, we loaded all of our gear onto the boat. And there were 7 of us all together. 3 people on the boat were deaf, and 4 of them were hearing. And I knew the other people who were deaf. And two of the hearing people were good friends, but I didn't know any of them. So they introduced me. There was a captain and a skipper. They were really good mechanics and knew how to fix large boats. So I felt pretty safe. When we started off on our journey, I just kind of sat there, we were getting out of the jetty, and it was 34 feet. The waves were going, and it was a smooth ride. I just couldn't imagine, the swordfish, the sharks, reeling in a big catch. I was really looking forward to it. And we got out. We had to go 80 to 100 miles, and I had never gone that far from shore before. I've maybe done 15, 20 miles offshore, but 80 to 100 was a big change for me. It was the first time I'd ever done anything like that before, but, I was with all these people, so I thought it would be good. So then we started to, if we went quickly, we'd arrive in 1 or 2 hours, but we wanted to go slowly. We wanted to arrive in about 6 hours, so the speed was pretty slow, but I was so anxious. I wanted to hurry on, but it wasn't my business. It was the captain's decision. It was his boat, what he wanted to do, and it was free. So I didn't complain. I just kind of sat there, talked with, a few people, and chatted, and got to know each other. I had known the other 3 deaf people from growing up, but, it got to be midnight, and it was really dark. And we stopped the boat. There were oil rigs. You could see them in the distance, probably about 4 or 5 miles out. But you could see the oil rigs and the light shining off of them. The sky was so dark black, and it was just really just interesting the way that it looked when you were looking up. So there were these 4 trolls and 3 knots that, they were like slow motors that we could just sit in the water and it would rock back and forth, so that's how we stopped, and it was really exciting. I was ready to go fishing at night, My fishing philosophy is different than theirs, They're kind of rookies, but I didn't mind. It was free. And it got to be kind of boring. So then when we, pulled all the rods in and stuff, by the oil rigs, there'd be a red snapper, a kingfish, and all kinds of different things. I thought it would be better than nothing, and then we could bring it home to eat. But then we passed the oil rigs, and we went further and further, about 100 miles. The one deaf friend said, don't worry, if not, you're going to feel better. We're going to do some bottom fishing. We're not going to do, the stuff that we do during the daytime. I said, okay, whatever. Still kind of bored at this point. And, I thought tomorrow morning I'd be ready to do some more fishing. It got to be night, and they were all stubborn. I really, really wanted the swordfish. I was being stubborn, rather, not them, but the hearing people just kind of sat there and talked and talked and talked and talked. And then it got to be overnight. It had been 24 hours. Can you imagine just sitting there in the daytime with the hot sun? I wasn't going to do that. So I went in the cabin. There were 3 rows. And then something in the back for the rods. And there was like a flat thing in the front. And then there were beds, that in the kitchen, and then the captain's room and stuff, and they were just bunks that everybody slept on down there. And then you could go out on the deck, and so anyway, I had fallen asleep, and there was AC in the cabin, and we had satellite TV. I was able to watch football there. There were 3 different games. I was so distracted because there was, people fishing, and I could see them out the window, and it just felt like, I was lucky, and I was worn out and tired because it had been 24 hours that I was watching those fishing things. But then, it had got to be like 60 or 90 feet now. The boat that we were on was huge. It was a 50-foot boat. And it could, rock back and forth up to 20 feet. But after that, it would be dangerous for as much as it would be rocking. So I had fallen asleep down in the cabin. About midnight, it was Friday at midnight all the way until Saturday at midnight that we had been out here. I was sweating, I had eaten a little bit, and so I decided I was going to take a nap. They were still fishing, and when you went down to where the engine was and the motors were running, you could see in the middle there was a generator. It was a red generator, and then on the outside were green things. So I went down there and I looked in the engine room, and I decided to take a nap on this, they had a mattress in that room. And when I had opened up, there was it looked like a piston or something, and then I saw smoke coming out of it, and it was really strong, or rather I smelled smoke coming out of it really strong. So I came up on deck and I told the guys, I said, there's some smoke coming out of in the engine room, and they said, oh, no, it's just hot and it's generating steam, it's not really a big deal. I said, okay. I went back to sleep, and the smoke just got worse and worse and worse. It was so strong. I picked up the rug, and all this smoke came open. I opened up everything, and the smoke came billowing out in my face. One of the engines had burnt out because the oil was bad inside it, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay. I had told them what I'd seen, and they just didn't pay attention. So I figured I would turn it off, because now it was only the one red engine was running. I thought, that was better than nothing. So about midnight, 2 hours later, I was tired, so I'd gone back to sleep again. And then all of a sudden the boat was moving a bunch. So I opened up that area again. Like in the control room, the steering part had broken, and the boat was just kind of out of control. It was just spinning, and there was no rod to connect the wheel to the rotor had broken, and so the boat was going out of control. And there were all kinds of waves, There were 8-foot waves knocking the boat back and forth and back and forth. And they brought all the fishing gear in, and the mechanic, the captain, came down, opened, and tried to fix it. So we had to wait 2 hours until he finally connected the rod that goes to the steering wheel. I was relieved at that point. And then we kept, when we were sailing, we were going against the current, against the waves, and they were hitting. And I said, it's been 24 hours, it's midnight, we just had fixed the steering column, and the front area it was cold in the front. There were 35-mile-per-hour winds, and it was just felt like we were rocking all over the place. These giant waves with white crests, rolling and hitting each other. It was really choppy water, and I was like, what? I think it's time, to stop fishing. We had 12 to 14 hours left, and I said, I felt like I really wanted to go home. I wasn't comfortable with this. But I was upset because I hadn't gotten to do any swordfish. I didn't catch any of them, and they were just doing those pull things, and I felt like I wasted my time. But what? Again, it was free. So we were on our way home. About 3 in the early morning, and the power just went out. And there was no power left, and the boat started going all over the place again. And that was about 3 or 4 foot waves, and then it became rather rocking, and then it became 10 to 12 foot, and it looked like if the moon was coming up and down, but you could see it, the moon, the stars were rocking all over the place. That's what the view looked like from rocking so much on the boat. Water was splashing us, and some people were asleep, and they were falling off of their bunks, and just rocking all over the place. Drinks were falling in the kitchen. There was all kinds of debris on the front of the boat, from where everything had collected. And I was asleep. I was just being knocked all over the place. It was awful. It was totally uncomfortable. I couldn't sleep, and the power was out, so the mechanic went back down there and tried to fix the generator, and said, oh, I forgot to put water in the heater, and it broke down. So they filled it with water and waited for it to fix. That took another 2 hours. And then finally the lights came back on, slowly but surely. And still remember I said there was just one engine running, and I was like, okay. So at the time that the power went off, the AC had shut out too, the TV turned off, everything in the entire boat. The power steering, everything that was connected to electricity stopped. But the motor was still going. It was fighting so hard against the waves, and against the current, and against everything. waves were coming from all directions. You couldn't predict which way. It was so dark because it was night. It was crazy. So, got the power back on. And in the generator, it's like you can't get to where the hooks are. So if the waves steer the boat, you have to have a special parachute to go against the current while you're fixing it. That way, and then you had to help the man pull the parachute back up and put it back inside. So I had a little bit of experience with that. And then, do we have to turn the engine off? And he said, yeah. And I was like, okay. So you have to turn it off and then go home. And I said, turn it off, turn it off. He's like, no, it's neutral. And he didn't understand what I meant. I said, if it's in neutral, there's still a little bit of rotation because the water is going and spinning it. It doesn't mean that the motor's on, it just means that it's moving. And if you turn it off, it's going to lock. So it's about 400 or 500 pounds of water pushing against the engine. It's really strong and extremely hard. And so the boat was just going out of control because the water was hitting that and moving it in circles. And, the water hitting the propeller underneath. And so it was just stuck. So they'd fixed the generator finally, and the steering was fixed, and I was ready to get home in a hurry, but no, it's like, oh crap, okay. So my friend came down, he had on his snorkel, and I was like, no, he said he's an experienced diver, really experienced. I've worked for a diving company before. But he didn't have a tank. He would just breathe and then go under and fix it. But if he was going under, the boat would hit him in the head and scratch it, and blood would be coming all out if he went underneath and was trying to fix it as the boat's rocking in the water. So we had to attach a line to him so that we could, keep him in place and not be hitting the boat, which is so dangerous. It wasn't bad. There were a couple scratches on his shoulders and his head. And there are lights on the bottom of the boat underneath that you can see if you have to go under there, but we were stuck. By this time it was 6 in the morning, and the sun was coming up, and it was getting worse and worse. The mist was getting worse and worse. Water was coming everywhere. The waves were just so high. It was probably 45 degrees, and I couldn't go out to the front of the boat. We were just spinning all over the place, so the other people, they looked like they were drunk. So I decided to call the Coast Guard because I thought that would be the best decision. And they said, "Do they want to work?" I said, "I want to let you know it's going to be 5 hours before we get there." So for 5 hours, we have to sit in these waves and all this terrible ocean. We didn't have masks. We were thirsty. The sun was so hot, and it was terrible. The waves were coming up on the side of the boat and making the boat go all out of control, and it was incredible. But now I'm an experienced fisherman, and remember I said that boat was 50 feet. I know how to control a 20-foot boat. So at that time it was 6 in the morning, and it was about 12 to 15 feet. know what's gonna happen, you know? I'm not scared, but I'm cool, and I felt kind of like 12 or 15 feet. But if it got past 20, I'd be worried. I'd be worried if it was over 20. So 15 feet's enough to make me concerned. So my heart was racing a little bit, and while we're standing there rocking on the boat and waiting for the Coast Guard to come to tow us, to connect a tow to our boat and haul us back and all of that stuff, at that time, they were 40 feet. Remember? I had experience with 50 feet. They might have, like, special engine or different things, slower, like 3 knots, and then we, get to the shore by 10 or 11 hours. And the whole time we'd be in all these waves going up and down and up and down. And then if the line broke, then we'd have to come connect another line and tow us some more, and just have to deal with all of this. And then the cabin, as it's rocking back and forth, you can't, like, walk easily. You have to crawl, because you just keep falling all over the place, and you get bruises everywhere, hitting your elbows, hitting your sides and everything, your entire body, just because being knocked and tumbled all over the place. I lost my hat, and the wind had blown it off twice. It was my favorite hat. I've had it for 12 years. I loved it. I cherished it. It was my favorite hat ever. But the wind took it away. I was so depressed. And I was angry. So, after all this time, we finally made it and pulled into the bay. And we pulled in, and we got settled, and it was kind of like my own perfect storm. It was interesting, it was a terrible fishing experience. It was the worst ever, and I think, that people who are rookies shouldn't be out there doing that. I said, how old's your boat? And they said it was a 1968 boat, and it has a new engine and everything. And I said, but I found out that he lied. It was rebuilt, and everything was wearing out. So that's the problem when you have rookies taking on a fishing trip. Back was sore and everything. It was cool, whatever. And the waves were terrible, and it just felt like, it was awful. But my point in this story is that you have to respect Mother Nature. You have to.